Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Rock Video Rental. I am Brandon. With me, as always, is Caleb. And we are continuing on with Awesomely Bad January. And we're going to be talking about a big time cult classic horror movie in Basket Case. But before we get to that, we're going to do like we always do. And Caleb, have you watched anything cool?
Mainly football. Lions doing some cool stuff this year, so gotta make sure to watch that while it
Yeah.
lasts. So no game this week because they got the bye, but no, I haven't really been watching any shows or TV. It's been getting back to work, and it's actually been pretty kind of a hectic week, so I've been going to bed a little bit early.
Rock.
So I'm a boring old man right now.
Dude, I don't really have too much either. I've just been so busy trying to catch back up after the holidays. But yeah, I watched the Lions too. Yeah, pretty excited. Now we got some guys coming back, so that should help. I've watched some of the Office Superfan episodes. That's really about it. Um, Before we recorded, I watched the new two-part mini series about Jerry Springer
Okay,
on Netflix. That was pretty interesting. It's called Fights Camera Action,
nice.
and just like how the show started off as like a normal talk show, and it wasn't doing very well. And they brought in this new producer guy, and he came up with the idea of just like, what's the most ridiculous stories we can get in on this? And then it led to all the idiots fighting and stuff, and that's how it became like the number one most watched show on TV.
Yeah,
And just
you are not the
moving
father
on
of the
from there and
baby.
everything.
Oh
Oh,
my god.
Jerry, Jerry. Oh man. And man, other than that, I got a couple movies that I have to finish. I watched part of In Search of Darkness 4, I think it is now, because they it's a horror movie documentary series. In Search of Darkness 1, 2, and 3 are all based in the 80s. It's
Mhm.
all 80s horror movies. Like the first one was like the most well-known ones. The second one was like kind of what was left, and then the third was a lot of like shot on video, direct to rental, like smaller movies.
Mhm.
And now the fourth one's all it's like 1990 to 1994 or something like that. So I've watched it's like a 5 or 6 hour documentary.
Oh jeez.
Yeah, so I've watched like maybe an hour of it, something like that. So I have to go back and keep watching it. But I saw that. I there is a movie that I watched, my wife and I watched last weekend. We watched The Substance with Demi Moore,
Oh yeah.
the new horror movie that she's
Mhm.
in. That's a really interesting movie. It's very weird. There's times where my wife is like, "What in the hell is going on in this?" Which nothing really shocks me that much because I've seen so much weird stuff. But I don't know, I really liked it. I thought it was handled really well. Basically, the story for it is, and I'm not ruining anything in it of it because if you look at the plot on IMDb, it'll tell you the same thing. So Demi Moore plays a like a fitness uh person from like the 90s that
Okay.
did like workout videos and stuff, kind of like Jane Fonda's aerobic stuff like that, or Susan Powder or something like that. But she takes like this black market medicine called the substance that's supposed to create a better version of yourself. And
Mhm.
they tell you multiple times like this other person is going to be you, and you're this other person is you. You share the experiences. And like the rule is like each of you can only last for 7 days, and then you have to switch off with the other one to like recharge. and then
Yeah.
like do not exceed the 7 days. Well, and then it's like, of course, one starts exceeding the 7 days and it has effect on the other one, basically.
Mm.
It's very strange. It's like she has like the super young woman that basically emerges from her, and then she becomes like famous, and it kind of goes from there. So it's like a back and forth thing. But yeah, very interesting movie. The ending is really strange, but yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty good.
Mm.
And another movie that I watched part of, I started watching slasher movie Blood Tracks today. It's about an 80s metal band that goes off into the wilderness to like shoot a music video. And there's like an avalanche and everything, and they start getting hunted down by some like wild man out in the woods.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, they just came out with a 4K Blu-ray for it. So I don't know. So far, it's been pretty good. I mean, it merges two things that I really like: 80s hair bands and 80s slasher movies. So yeah, looking forward to watching the rest of that. But other than that, that's pretty much it for me. Um, I did get a chance to revisit Basket Case for probably like the sixth time. So let's talk about it. Basket Case, it is from 1982 and is directed by Frank Henenlotter. The plot is a young man carrying a big basket that contains his extremely deformed, formerly conjoined twin brother seeks vengeance on the doctors who separated them against their will. The cast, we got Kevin Van Hettenreich as Dwayne, Terry Susan Smith as Sharon, Beverly Bonner as Casey, Robert Vogel as the hotel manager, Diana Brown as Dr. Cutter, Lloyd Pace as Dr. Needleman, and Bill Freeman as Dr. Lifflander. Um, I remember the very first time I ever saw this movie.
And I have a very important question to ask you about that. Why the heck did you watch this movie the first time?
Oh man, this was, gosh, I was, I think it was when I was living in uh that apartment you used to come and stay at
Okay.
there in Williamston.
Okay. All right. So this was later. Okay. So that
Yeah,
making a little bit more sense.
yeah, it was like I was looking up just like different 80s horror movies and stuff and stumbled across this. And I think I bought a DVD off Amazon for like, I don't, it was less than like $10. And I remember the first time I watched it because my dad came over for some reason. And I remember I like opened that up and I was like, oh, I got a movie on DVD here in the mail. And he's like, oh yeah, what is it? And then I told him. And for whatever reason, we decided to watch it. My dad was just kind of like there. And then we watched the whole thing. We get to the end of it, and he's just like, "Oh, that was weird."
Oh my gosh.
He's like, "What the heck kind of movie was that?" But
I can
yeah,
safely say my dad is not the type of person who would watch bad movies with me. Like that's not his jam. He'd be like, "Okay, I'm done."
uh, yeah, my dad has watched his fair share of junk too. So
Well, I was
he's like, it wasn't. He's like, at least it wasn't like a boring movie.
true. I was halfway anticipating that you were gonna say something like you watched it in high school or something,
Mm,
because I was just like, man, I don't. I mean, because I know like we talked about in college, and then of course that was after college at the time period you were talking about. So like we were exploring, those off the beam path movies, and of course you and your horror movie background and everything, so I could totally see it there. But it's just like there are so many people out there who do not even know this movie exists, and I mean, rightfully so. Though it is something else. I will say that much right now.
Yeah, it's definitely off the wall, uh, completely and utterly ridiculous. But like my dad said, at least it's not boring.
Very true. Very true.
uh, I I think the last time I watched this was in the theater. It was part of the first year I went to Howell Theater and watched the 12-hour horror movie marathon.
Hmm.
It was in that first marathon of movies I saw. But yeah, it's just a ridiculous, goofy movie.
Well, and for context,
Mhm.
because I'm sure that there are going to be people who are listening who have not seen this movie. Most people, if you saw the title of this episode and decided to listen to it, probably have seen this movie. But for context, this is an awesomely bad movie that did not intend to be an awesomely bad movie. Like, you could tell that they were legit trying to make a horror movie,
Yeah,
and they just did enough things throughout it between um clunky special effects, uh
unintentional humor.
unintentional humor, bad acting, and a slew of other things, funny decision making. It comes out as an awesomely bad movie.
Oh yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, and a little different from what we did last time with Toxic Avenger,
Exactly.
because Toxic Avenger was supposed to have some of that goofy humor in it,
Yeah, they were
Where
leaning
this one,
into
I'm
it.
not sure that it was fully intentional to have that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but I do like respect the director of this movie because he would get an idea for something and he would just kind of roll with it and he would just make his own movie.
Well, I must say, and I cannot say that it is original from my level of knowledge with this. It is a very unique concept for a movie.
Yeah.
So kudos for that.
Well, I mean, this is the second Frank Henenlotter movie we've done because we did Brain Damage as well
hmm
with the little slug that feeds on a dude's brain. And I mean, that's a really original idea too. Um, and then he's got like three of like bigger movies, his movies that are more popular, kind of cult following. So it'd be this one, Brain Damage, and then he also made Frankenhooker,
Okay.
which is another just kind of ridiculous movie as well. That one's from the early 90s, but it's like this guy, his fiance dies, and he reanimates her by rebuilding her with bits and pieces from prostitutes. Yeah, and she becomes the Frankenhooker. But yeah, another ridiculous movie. Uh,
He gets an A for creativity.
yeah, that's for sure. And coming up with an idea, doing it himself, and rolling with it, and not changing stuff. Sticking to his guns. I'll give him that. Uh, it, it's hard to explain what makes this movie like so awesomely bad. I mean, the idea of the disfigured, formerly conjoined twin brother in a basket, and the brother looks like a wadded up piece of Hubba Bubba with glowing eyes and like this long claw hand that he uses. I
A club hand and
don't know how to
fangs for
explain it.
teeth.
Yeah, and he doesn't talk, but he can speak telepathically
Yeah.
with the other brother.
Well, the
I
one,
want to see a Belial versus Klaatu fight from Total Recall.
yeah. Well, I one of the things that I thought was most interesting is that apparently the the mutated brother. What was he referred to again as? Black.
A Siamese twin brother?
Yeah, like what did they? Didn't they call him something, or didn't Dwayne call him something? They had
He
kind of
said he
like
looked
an.
like a squash octopus.
Well, no, they had like I thought they had a name, kind of him and his aunt or something.
I don't
I didn't
remember.
catch it and write it down. But anyways, his deformed brother.
Yeah.
Um, the deformed brother apparently, even though all he has is a head and two mutated arms, has like super strength
Yeah.
and is able to somehow jump with no legs.
He's able to somehow live.
Yeah.
Where he's basically, you know what it reminds me of? This is a really weird thing. Do you remember those little rubber monster things you could put on your finger?
Oh yeah.
And they looks like it has like an alligator head and like these long arms that looked like, I don't know, like Kermit the Frog's arms, like these long spindly arms.
Mm,
That's what Belial reminds me of. And like somehow he can live like that. Like, how does he poop? He eats a lot. How does he poop? Does he just have like a butthole on his back?
right. Well, then also like the oh um shoot, I kind of got distracted there for a second. Um, he also looks a little bit like the old. It was a toy for Ghostbusters, the little green blob alien thing. Like
Yeah,
I can't.
Slimer.
Yeah, I can't remember which one it was specifically was, but I remember there being a toy, and he reminded me of that. There is another thing though that I thought he reminded me of, and I was trying to find. I'm actually trying to look it up right now, but I don't think I'm gonna be able to. But in Star Wars: Return of the Jedi, at
Hmm.
Jabba's palace, Jabba's like number two guy, who like answers the door and has like that his like head is like kind of like a long lizard tail and it kind of goes around
Yeah,
his
Bib Fortuna.
yeah, that he looks like that too.
Yeah. I wondered where you were going with that. I'm like, is he gonna talk about Bib Fortuna or Salacious Crumb?
Right.
The little guy that just sits on Jabba's lap and laughs the whole time.
No, not that one. More like Bib Fortuna.
Uh,
So
yeah. Just like I said, he looks like a chewed up piece of bubble gum with arms. But yeah, somehow he has superhuman strength and can
yeah,
just like destroy people.
he survived. You learn this later on in the movie because they do a flashback at about like three quarters of the way through the movie that um he survived being separated from his brother. The deformed brother survives the
Hmm.
surgery, after which they detached him, and so he's like all cut up, separated from his brother. They obviously would not have spent time patching him up, and they put him in a trash bag out with the
Yeah.
trash. And somehow, like after who knows how much time passed, he survived.
Yeah, he telepathically, speaks with Dwayne and he goes and gets him out of the trash.
Yeah.
And the ant takes care of Dwayne and Belial.
But then it leads to one of the most so very quickly at the for the last, I don't know, I want to say like third of the movie, the craziness and bizarreness of this movie accelerates very quickly.
Right?
Yeah, like
Like Belial hates the fact that Dwayne is like seeing this receptionist girl
mhm.
for whatever reason. Is
Yeah.
is he like an incel? Is this an involuntary celibate? I mean, because I'm assuming he doesn't have any junk or anything,
Mhm.
But he does grope women,
Yeah, well then
which is very unnerving.
he attempts to have intercourse
Yeah.
and winds up killing the girl, which is so screwed. That level of like screwed up, how that was like up until that point, he was like in her room, groping someone in their sleep. Okay, gross, perverted, whatever, like scary, creepy. But
Yeah.
then they take it further and he goes to the lengths, the deformed brother goes to the lengths of not exactly performing intercourse, but in any way possible that he could essentially do that with his deformities he is.
Yeah.
And it's like a bloody mess because he's killed the girl. Like
Yeah.
that um shock level from that, the only other thing that I can currently say that probably was close that was close to that shock value, that was still more than that shock value, was the old boy.
Yeah.
That whole like disgusting revelation that happened in that. Like it just was like, wow, you decided to take this there. Like you're not insinuating it, you're not discussing it, you're not saying like, oh, he wound up doing this. You are like showing it, and you are like you are making it up. You are putting all your cards in. You're or all in, all the chips in.
It went there.
It went there all out.
And that makes Dwayne go nuts and him and Belial fight,
Mm-hmm.
which is ridiculous because he's basically just fighting with a puppet. And Belial like grabs him by the junk and lifts him up off the ground.
Yeah.
And he just like screams and they end up falling out of a window. But yeah.
Yeah.
uh,
So much happening at the end of that movie.
oh yeah, for sure. It accelerates big time. I had in my notes that Belial is just a huge cock blocker.
Basically, yeah.
Because there's that part where Dwayne is like, this is the part that got me, like, and I still don't really understand it. It's like he's having a dream. Then he's like running down the streets in New York butt naked. But then he shows up at the receptionist's apartment.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't understand that. And then him and the receptionist are gonna like do it, but then Belial's there, and yeah, it's just this big clunky thing.
Yeah, so what I took away from that and what I think they were trying to go for, which this is very confusing because if this is indeed what they were trying to convey, it was very inconsistent through the movie because they are connected telepathically. Um, when Blyle escaped and went to the receptionist's apartment, it was kind of, because they're connected. Dwayne essentially was envisioning himself
Oh,
going to
okay.
the apartment, and believe the reason why he was naked was because, well, essentially if he's envisioning himself going because Blyle's doing it, Blyle's naked, like he doesn't wear anything.
Hmm, that
So
makes sense.
I feel like they were kind of trying to do a connection like that, but the thing that doesn't help support that is that throughout other parts of the movie they aren't connected that well. Like for instance, like if that was the case, then Dwayne never would have hung out with the girl because he would know that Blyle would be able to connect with him tel- uh, telepathically and know what he's doing.
Yeah.
And so, but then there is a time when he does connect with him when Dwayne winds up kissing her when they're at the Statue of Liberty. Blyle somehow not knows
Yeah.
and causes him to have like a mental freak out breakdown kind of a thing.
And he trashes the hotel room and it's in stop motion and it's amazing.
Yes, that stop motion is fantastic, which definitely adds to the quality of this movie.
Oh yeah, the first time I saw that I about died laughing. That's still one of my favorite scenes in this movie when he trashes the hotel room.
Absolutely.
Uh, I will say that I think one of the funniest parts of this movie is the hotel manager.
Oh, dude, I had that too.
The guy just cracked me up.
He was one of my favorites. He was like grumpy Mario.
Yeah, he's like It's like Danny DeVito in Taxi. He's always just like pissed off and what the hell is going on? But he never throws him out.
I know, like he doesn't do anything. Like he's just like, okay, somebody got like stuff, weird stuff has been happening since this guy came here, but he pays, so I don't really care that much. A guy
Yeah.
died, it's okay. A girl got attacked, it's okay.
As long as he pays his money, I don't care what he does. Um, which is I've mentioned lots of times. I don't know if I mentioned it so much on the podcast, but I know I've mentioned it on the YouTube show,
Mm-hmm.
Slash Request, that like seedy, grimy, dirty 80s New York, like I'm always entertained by it.
You have mentioned that at least one time on the podcast.
Yeah,
I do know that.
I think when we did Taxi Driver, I mentioned it,
I think you're right.
where it's just they made so many movies around that time focused there and just like the dirty, sleazy parts of New York and how it used to be. And to me, it's always just like a great setting for a movie. And there's also you got the movies around the same time too, where it was just dirty, sleazy, Los Angeles too.
Yeah.
But yeah, he like this hotel he stays in is just disgusting, like a flea bag place where it's just like you expect your one, well, his one neighbor is a prostitute, and
Mm-hmm.
then it's like you'd almost expect another neighbor to be like a heroin addict or something.
Yeah.
But uh,
Well, he had money too, so it's like, why didn't he go somewhere else?
right, he has this huge wad of money, but he goes to like this just beat up, gross place in like the nastiest part of New York. But another great character I thought was the prostitute. I thought she was pretty cool.
Yeah, she was one of the better ones.
Yeah, she was a pretty decent actress. It was like your typical prostitute with a heart of gold. Like she kind of looked out for him and befriended him.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was funny too that she's a prostitute and then like Belial goes into her apartment and like gropes her, but you don't ever see her naked,
Yeah.
which is a funny choice.
I actually fully expected that she was the one that they were going to try to that she was going to be the character that they were going to try to like have a topless scene or something like that
Yeah,
because
that's what I expected too. Like,
it
I
would
mean,
have been
she wears like a
cliche.
thin t-shirt
Yeah.
and Belial like gropes her through the t-shirt and steals her underwear.
Yeah.
I'm
Uh
like, okay, Belial, like he must be so hard up that he's willing to take the panties of a prostitute.
oh well dude, I mean if he were real and what he was, like yeah, I would fully expect that
Yeah, but it's like,
he would take any opportunity.
yeah, I mean this is a hooker that's in the nastiest, dirtiest part of 80s New York. And he's
And sh-
taking those things, like no telling what's in those.
and she probably wouldn't even touch him no matter how much he paid her.
Right?
Yeah. Speaking of characters, though, who would you say was the absolute worst actor in this movie?
Oh man.
I have a quick answer.
Uh, the female doctor was pretty bad.
Yes, Dr. Cutter is my immediate answer. Like the first scene she was in, I was like, "Wow, she is a wooden board." And then
Yeah, for sure.
she did the scene where she got attacked by Belial,
Yeah.
and that was the first time she showed any change in emotion. And
Even when
it's
she's supposed to be pissed off when she was like on that date with that guy, which was really weird.
yeah. Well, then but the thing that was funny too is like she took she was either 0 or 100.
Yeah.
And so like 90% of the time she's 0, but then she has to go to 100 when she gets attacked by Belial, and then she winds up like Belial somehow forces her face into a drawer. This is where I feel like this is where the craziness really took off And Bile pushed her face into a drawer of like surgical tools, and
Yeah.
then they escape, and her staff comes in, breaks in to see why she's screaming, and she's like just screaming her head off, like just standing in place with all these knives like stuck in her face.
Yeah.
And it just like it's funny, I get it, like they're trying to drive it home, but also is just so like I don't know, irrational, like it was weird. Like that was one of those things that definitely was not intentional to be funny, but it wound up being absolutely hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah, she was by far the worst. I mean, the other doctors weren't great either, but she was by far the worst.
Yeah.
I wonder how much experience in acting she even had and if she ever did anything else.
Yeah.
She could have just been a friend of Frank Henenlotter's,
Mm-hmm.
and it wouldn't surprise me. Uh, I also like too how these doctors had to be reminded that they had this experience of
Thank you.
separating Belial and Dwayne. Like that'd be something that you would never forget in your entire life. Like we separated this horribly deformed conjoined twin from an otherwise normal looking guy.
Mm-hmm. And in their
Yeah.
house too.
Yeah.
It wasn't even at a hospital.
Yeah. And they were being I mean they were one step away from just using a paper cutter to cut those two apart with the with the sound effects and everything.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Yeah, I think it's hilarious that they all seem to like forget about it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh god. Um trying to think of other things that were like great in this. The kills are just beyond ridiculous. It's basically just this puppet reaching up and grabbing their face, and all of a sudden a bunch of blood appears, and they scream, and then they die.
Yeah.
It is like you basically just mutilates them. Yeah, I still think the hotel manager is my favorite character, just because of like how he's always just so dang grumpy.
Mhm.
It's but he doesn't really care what's going on as long as he's getting paid. And then you got the other one, Weasley guy, that keeps trying to steal Dwayne's money,
Yeah.
the bald guy.
Mm-hmm.
It was an interesting character as well.
One thing that we
Uh,
didn't talk about that I wanted to mention, as far as like bizarre, like once the ball started rolling and things just kept getting crazier and crazier, I think I believe if I have the order correct, like they killed the female doctor and then they did like a little bit of a flashback, or maybe the flashback was right before that.
yeah.
Um, and in the flashback was the whole when they got separated, everything, and then they got separated and Dwayne went and got Blyle, and then the next thing you know, like they're in the basement of the house making a lot of noise for who knows what reason, like they don't even explain, but it wakes the dad up and he goes down to investigate. And first question I have is, how big was that house?
That was massive.
Yeah, because he was going through the house upstairs, and it's like room after room after room. But then he goes into the basement, and the basement has like room after room after room. And I'm just like, dude, what the heck is this? It was like
The basement's basically a hotel.
I know, right? I was saying that it was like the size of a basement of like a high school or something. So he goes through this long, dark, deep, like trying to set up the creepiness of this basement. Finally tracks down that he has this saw down there that was turned on, and they don't even explain really why it was happening. But somehow it gets turned on, and then it just like lunges at him and splits him in half.
Yeah. I don't have an explanation for that, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wondered that too. Even the first time I watched this movie, I'm like, how huge is this freaking house?
Hmm.
And they live in upstate New York. They said that like 5,000 times. Uh, I think the fact that Belial looks so crappy in this and like his eyes glow red at times just adds to the charm of this movie
Hmm.
because he looks so terrible that it's just so hilarious.
Yeah, I would agree. That definitely reinforces the awesomely bad element to the movie.
Yeah, definitely. Um, man, I don't even have like quotes that really stood out to me. Another scene that cracks me up is Dwayne gets him this TV, gets Belial a TV so he can go like on a date with that girl.
Hmm.
And he's just like, oh, it's like, here you go. You can watch whatever you want to watch. I'm going to be gone for a while. I'll be back. And the first thing Belial tries to do is change the channel and the knob breaks off.
Yep.
then he just sends him in a rage.
Hmm. Uh, well,
That's cracks me up.
one of the funnier elements of this movie, which is kind of like not that important, but just makes me laugh, is the relationship between Dwayne and the receptionist. Then,
Hmm.
from the aspect that they just threw that thing together so sloppily. So like
Yeah.
Dwayne, first of all, like Dwayne goes in and then she mistakes him as some kind of like repair guy, and then he winds up being saying that he wants to see the doctor because he knows him, and so they chat a little bit, but then he goes to leave, and then she like super uncharacteristic for any time in a short span of time like that, especially from the aspect that Dwayne is not like a drop dead gorgeous guy.
Yeah.
She hits on him and tries to set up a date with him.
Yeah. She
So
basically
first,
like throws herself at him.
yeah. So first of all, already they're already making it super, unrealistic.
Yeah.
But then he's just like, okay, well, what's your address? Blah blah blah. So then they meet up, and they go out, and she's just like, "You're just different," and it's just like, why? Like you haven't explained anything. You've got like you were not reinforcing anything about these characters,
Hmm.
and you're just feeding like you are almost literally having your characters read a script out just so that you can update the audience on what's going on. And so she's just like, you're just different. And um no explanation why, but she gets like super attached,
Hmm.
to which then they go back because Dwayne winds up having like a mental episode because Blyle is having an episode. So
Yeah.
Dwayne knows something's wrong. So they go back to the hotel, and Dwayne freaks out on the receptionist on just being like, you need to get out of here. Like, I mean, abusive stuff.
Yeah.
And so he goes there, but then she comes crawling back to him because, of course, eventually she finds out that her boss is dead and all those kind of things. And she's just like, the only person I thought of coming to see was you. And I'm just like, you have no family, you have no friends. Like, you've met this guy one time and he was basically abusive to you. And he's the guy that you turn to. Like, they put practically no effort into developing that relationship.
No, not at all.
They just basically forced you to be okay with it, to be like, oh well, really it's not that bad.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, I totally feel that way too. The whole thing was rushed. Nothing was explained. Nothing makes any sense between those two.
I mean, I've seen a lot of movies where they make the audience connect the dots, but that relationship was one of like the worst, where it's just like no way in any form of reality would this occur
Oh,
on
yeah, for
so many
sure.
levels.
Yeah, I would say that's one of the minuses in this movie.
Well, it adds to
But it
awesomely bad though.
yeah, I was gonna
Yeah.
say, like, I mean, the whole thing, the whole premise, the whole idea is dumb, but it works
Yeah.
in the world that's created in it. And the same thing with their relationship as well. Because I don't really have anything that's full on bad. I mean, but if you look objectively at it, it's just like, well, the whole thing is bad. but that's why it's so great.
Yeah.
The stop motion is really bad, but it's hilarious.
Hmm.
Belial looks terrible, but it's hilarious.
Well,
And
that's
so on.
yeah, that's the thing about awesome. I feel like I usually bring it up with most of these episodes where it's just like the one of the biggest things that has to make a bad movie an awesomely bad movie is that it has to have an entertainment value.
Hmm.
It does not have to be the most entertaining thing, but it has to be entertaining enough to get you through the movie that you'll watch it and probably watch it more than once. And this absolutely had it. Like it was not like as a horror movie itself, it's not like a good, effective, entertaining horror movie. It is a movie that is bad, and because it is bad, is entertaining.
Yeah. Yep. I would agree with that. Um, Something that might blow your mind. Did you know there's two more of these movies? They
I'm
made
kind of
two
not.
sequels.
I'm kind of not surprised about it. I mean, I guess partially surprised just because they were trying, they made it that they died at the end, but
Yeah, but we know that doesn't really mean anything.
Friday 13th.
So Basket Case 2, that came out in 1990. So 8 years after this. Um, so the plot for it is Dwayne and his basket bound mutant brother are taken in by a secret home for wayward freaks with a journalist hot on their trail.
What? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
I've never
Not the
seen
cop,
that
not
one.
the
I've
cops,
seen
but
Basket
journalist.
Case 3. I
Okay.
had that one on VHS. Uh, and the plot for that one is Dwayne recovers from his delusional breakdown to find his freakish basket brown brother. Belial will soon become a father,
What?
but not everything is joyous as once tight knit brothers no longer seem to trust each other.
Oh my gosh.
And if I remember right, one of them shows Belial having sex with another, like, mutilated person, such as himself.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, just that's quality cinema right there. Man, I think we've covered pretty much everything. Do you want me to get into trivia and facts?
I'm ready for trivia and facts.
Okay. So most of the credits that appear at the end of the film are fake.
What?
The crew is very small, and rather than repeat the names over and over again, they decided just to make up names,
Oh my
which
gosh.
is great. So the film's budget was so low that the crew would go dumpster diving for discarded furniture and plumbing to dress the set pieces.
Okay.
So according to the writer slash director, Frank Henenlotter, he was emboldened to make the movie because he believed that nobody would ever see it. He claims to have been horrified when it became a success. More than 30 years after its initial release, it remains a cult classic among horror fans.
Oh my gosh.
So Frank Henenlotter admits that he didn't really know what he was doing while making the movie because it was his first feature-length directorial effort. As such, he actively experimented with the tone. If a scene wasn't scary, it could be funny, and if a scene wasn't funny, it could at least be entertaining for its shock value.
Jeez.
So when Dwayne checks into the Hotel Broslin, he takes out a wad of cash. According to the director, that money was the film's entire budget.
That's great.
Yeah. The scenes at the Statue of Liberty were shot without a permit. The crew figured that by the time they would be asked to leave, they would have had their footage for a brief scene anyway.
Nice.
The idea for the movie came to Frank Henenlotter when he was brainstorming movie titles that hadn't been used before. The title Basket Case made him think of a monster living in a basket, and the film evolved from there.
Hmm.
In addition to providing the face cast for the Belial puppet, um, the guy who played Dwayne, Frank, or I mean Kevin Van Henterreich, I think it's how you say it,
Hmm.
Henterreich, also performed the Mutant Twins voice effects. Terry Susan Smith, who played the receptionist, was actually bald at the time
Oh,
and wore a wig for all of her scenes.
huh.
In an interview in the issue of Fangoria, director Frank Henenlotter stated, I hate to admit this, but anytime you heard a woman walking, that was actually me in high heels. The sound effects were all looped later to create the main created mainly by Henenlotter and producer Edgar Levins.
Hmm.
Puppetry for Belial was performed by the producer's 8-year-old daughter after the puppet shrank down to be too tight for adult hands.
Yeah.
Oh man, imagine an 8-year-old working on this movie.
Right.
When Dwayne runs down the street naked, that was actually real. They did it super late at night, and the actor stripped down and ran. They covered him quickly and left because it was a real active street.
Oh my gosh.
And I got that fact from Joe Bob's Last Drive-In because he did this movie, and I believe he talked to Frank Henenlotter when they did it. But yeah, it was completely ridiculous. Joe Bob was a big advocate for this movie and like how much he loved it for it just not trying to be anything else. It's being exactly what it wants to be. This movie.
Yeah.
The last thing I got is this movie cost $35,000, and I don't think it has a box office number.
Wow. That is one of the cheapest movies that we've covered, that's for sure.
But yeah, I think so. Also grades. IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes. What do you think they are?
Oh my gosh, I feel like this is gonna be so difficult. Wow, 3.9.
Dude, it's a 6.2.
What? No freaking way, dude.
Dude, I think even Basket Case 3 is a higher than a 3.9.
Man, I just feel like there would be enough. Well, no, okay. Actually, I guess I should have taken a better approach to it because a lot of the people who would be watching this and actually grading it would probably be watching it because they like these kind of movies.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, because I was thinking in my mind that, actual just movie critics watching a lot of random movies, but who's going to come across this one? Not very many.
Right.
So, okay, Rotten Tomatoes, gosh, let's say 65 or wait,
78.
oh, 78. Okay.
Yeah.
Man, that's still I was actually
That's
going
the
to go
critic.
lower.
What do you think the audience is?
Oh man, are they going to be I feel like it's going to be more, so I'd say 82%.
It's 54.
Oh, it drops. Okay.
Yeah. Kind of surprised. I think I went first last time for Toxie.
Okay.
Do you want to go first this time?
Yeah. Um man, it's so it we talked about all the different things that just make this a bad movie, but the combination of it all on just the level of ridiculousness of some people's acting, um, to the choice of how they decided to shoot some things or process some of the story with like characters' deaths and things like that, just over the
Hmm.
top. Um, all of it combined is quite entertaining. I I think I'm going to wind up giving this kind of like a little bit of bonus points from the aspect of for kind of what we already talked about at the beginning, creativity.
Mm-hmm.
Like I will give it to them. This is a creative movie. There's not going to be a lot of stuff out there like this. Like this is not a simple like relationship story or action story or zombie story. Like this is quite unique, quite niche.
Yeah.
So give credit where credit's due. Uh, entertaining, definitely awesome, awesome and bad. I'm gonna give it a little bit of a bump from what I would probably typically give it, and so I'm gonna give it to a 4.5.
That's funny. It's exactly where I fell at.
Okay, nice.
The only reason I knocked it like half a point because it is one of those movies that I feel like I have to be in the mood to watch.
Mm-hmm.
But anytime I'm in the mood to watch it, it always hits like whatever it is I'm wanting.
Yeah.
And I feel like that way with a lot of Frank Henenlotter's movies. Like he's got his own style. I'll say that. And what he does well. And it's just the goofiness, the ridiculousness, and like it's just its own thing. It's not trying to be anything else, and it's an original idea. I can just appreciate that. So I think a 4.5 out of 5 is pretty solid for it.
Yeah. Rock.
And I would say this is the most famous of all of his movies,
Okay.
just because it does have a decent fan base and a lot of people have heard of it. But if I was to rank the three movies of his that like his big three, I would say this number one, Frankenhooker's number two, and then number three would be Brain Damage,
Okay.
which is because Frankenhooker's just completely ridiculous. But, I mean, when you have a title like Frankenhooker, I can't remember. There was a big name actor. It was Bill Murray. It was Bill Murray that said, "If you see any movie this year, make sure it's Frankenhooker."
That's awesome.
Oh, that doesn't really surprise me either because Bill Murray's goofy. But oh man, we are gonna be continuing on with Awesomely Bad. Next week we're gonna be doing more teen comedy that it's aged really bad. And it's been a while since I've watched this movie, but we're gonna be talking about Zapped with Scott Baio and Willie Ames, which was referenced on the episode of Family Guy when they go back to the 80s.
Mhm.
So yeah, it would be fun to go back and watch that one because I remember it being completely ridiculous. I remember me and Jason watched that the first time I saw it. It was on Netflix. It was like one of the first movies I streamed on Netflix.
Nice.
But yeah, if you guys are liking the show, please subscribe and share. You can follow us on social media. We're on pretty much every platform. Check out YouTube and TikTok for more content. And yeah, we're getting, I think we're officially over like 230 subscribers on YouTube,
Woohoo.
which doesn't sound like a lot, but when I started putting content on there, I think we had maybe five.
Right.
So it's grown a decent amount in the last year and a half, 2 years, something like that. If you guys are liking the horror stuff too, you can go on there. I got my YouTube show spin-off, Slasher Quest. I got a handful of episodes on there, but yeah, if you guys are liking Awesomely Bad, come by next week. We're gonna be talking about Zapped. And until then, as always, be kind and rewind.